Welcome along, guys. Welcome back to the garage. Welcome back to the Ducati project. Now, this is quite a long episode because it's all to do with stripping, prepping and painting an engine. I've spent the last 3 days solid at it. Stripping an engine, polishing an engine, prepping an engine, painting an engine, I mean. So without further ado, let's fire up the intro. Don't play with fire, kids. Turn that off, chops. You've got to set an example here. So there's the engine. I've basically just had a bit of a clean up in here to try and get all the real chain lubey grimy bits off. You can see the paint is is non-existent over all the back of the engine. Now my plan for cleaning this up, I've actually looked into a few different things. I've looked into CO2 blasting. Someone mentioned where that's using like a dry ice to actually blast the engine. A few people have said, you know, just take it for bead blasting. You can't do that when a whole engine's assembled because that blast media will end up getting through things like this and getting into the engine, and once you've got any grit in the engine, it will just destroy itself when you start it. So you can't do you can't do you know, aqua blasting, because obviously that's still bits of media and it's water, not when an engine's assembled like this. You can't do bead blasting, but CO2 blasting is like as I say, it's bits of ice blasted at the engine, so of course they just melt and rebound off the bike. If they do get in, it's just a little bit of water which will just evaporate or whatever. So that was an option, but it's very expensive, very specialized. You can rent machines, but it's not practical. So what am I going to do? So I am going to try just with my trusty drill and some wire brushes in the drill and see what we do. Now, got to be a little bit careful, you know, this doesn't damage the aluminium, because obviously I'm going to prime and paint this. So let's have a little test down here where the sprocket cover is going to hide things. So there we are. It's not bad actually. I mean, if there's any areas which are really scratched, I can run it over with some fine sandpaper to get them out, but you know what, I think that's okay. It's certainly getting rid of the paint, it's certainly getting rid of the corrosion, and this is exactly what I did to the Fireblade. When I had the Fireblade project where I swapped the 1000cc engine into the 900 chassis, I did exactly the same thing. Wire brush in a drill, I cleaned up all of the aluminium like that and I didn't have a problem. Let's do it. So first pass of the drill on the back of the engine, there's a few little marks where it's cut in a little bit, but I can just sand those down afterwards. That's got rid of most of the, keyed it up of course, got rid of most of the paint. I'm going to go over a little bit more, that's not finished. I'm downscaling now to the Dremel. The Dremel and little wheels like that. I think that's going to get in those nooks and crannies. There's hope yet. Some bits I'm just not going to get to. I'm just going to have to scrape off. That wore that out quite fast. Oh dear. I've just got my airline out and blown everything off, saying that, it's a flake of paint there. Probably going to have to do a bit more around here, get my little Dremel in these little nooks and crannies, but I'm a little bit happier now. I wasn't particularly happy with how this was going earlier on. I think it's just going to take a lot of time to get this where I want it to be. And then of course I've got to do more of the underside as well, so I'm going to have to tip the engine up to get to the underneath. So there we go, guys. That is, I think, the finished prep work now. I've just washed the whole engine down with degreaser and water, gently, of course. I think that's as good as I'm going to get it, to be perfectly honest. As I say, this casing is coming off anyway, so ignore these casings. I'm talking more about the metal work. Where the paint was flaking, I've removed it. I mean, around this area, it's really hard to get in here. Very, very difficult. I've got in there as best as I can, hopefully keyed areas up as best I can. It's now clean. Yeah, it's tough. All these little niggles, all these little areas here, it's really hard to get in to try and clean them up. I think I've done as good as I can. I think I've got it as good as I possibly can. I think now we are ready for a bit of primer. Morning, guys. Well, I've gone away, I've had a sleep, and I've decided this just ain't good enough. More work required. Hour and a half going over it again with wire wool, sanding pads. It's as good as it's going to ever be now. I've just washed it all down with brake cleaner, degreased the engine, and now I'm going to start masking things up, getting ready for that first coat of primer. It's a very complex shape, a very complex looking engine. It's not like the blade I did, which was just a straight four. That was like sanding almost like a box, you know. It's a very simple shape. This is complex, overhangs, you know, got fins for the oil cooling, so much more complex shape, taking me much longer to prep this engine for paint. Ideally, if budget would allow and my skill level would allow, I would just strip the whole engine down and send the casings off separately to maybe be Cerakoted or something like that, but that's beyond my skill level to reassemble this. I could probably take it apart but I'd never get it back together again, so it's not happening. This is a clean up as best you can. Otherwise, you're talking this budget of this bike. I could have probably bought a new Fireblade, a new SP Hypermotard, you know, the way this is going, if you go crazy like that. This is a clean up, a practical clean up that anyone, I would say, can tackle. You don't need any specialist tools, specialist knowledge. That's the idea of this project. Keep it simple. Oh, ooh, some valves. No gunge in there. That's good news. As part of this job, obviously, I'm going to check valve clearances and stuff when things go back together. Once I've painted it, I'll change the belts, I'll check the valve clearances. It's time to mask up the belt covers. There we go, ready for refitting. Well, there she is, guys, the final finish. Clean, sanded, masked off, things like that, and then the cable coming out. I think we've got a pretty good finish on this now. This has been about 6 hours work, 7 hours work perhaps, to try and prep this. It's been a lot of effort. Let's do it. First coat on, now we've got to leave it for 10 minutes. Welcome back, guys. Well, it's the next day after the primer went on. It's had 10 hours to go off properly. Results are pretty good. There's a couple of little areas where it could have been better, but you know, it's easy to get very, very carried away with this sort of thing. And when it is in the bike, I'm sure it's going to look fantastic. Some things where it could be slightly better. I should have done a better job getting the old paint off there. You can see, you can just see the old paint underneath there. The head here is a little bit rougher around the spot. Obviously new spark plugs going in here, but you can see there's a little bit, but I mean, it's like, come on, you know, it's just realistic here. I'm not looking to be able to show this bike in competitions. You know, this bike is still going to be very much used on the streets, gravelly lanes, thrashing around. I mean, that's where we are. I'm pretty happy with the results, and that's just with the primer. Once the silver goes on, I think I'm going to be over the moon. That's the first coat. Looks pretty nice. Happy with that. Coat number 2. One more to go. That is it finished. Well, finished. Barely started. But that's the finish on the engine. I've unmasked the belt covers. I've put a few little things back on the engine, like the overflow crankcase breather. But I'm pretty happy with the finish, to be fair. I mean, there's the odd little area where it's not absolutely fantastic, but you know what? For a usable bike, a road bike, not a show bike, I think what I've achieved fits the bill. These come off as well, so I'll probably send those off. Well, I'll definitely send those off to be coated in something. So maybe these on red, maybe these red at the top will look quite nice. Obviously same with the front cylinder, these pieces. This one I'm not sure what I can do because it's got rubber mounts attached to it, so I don't know how that would work with the rubber, so not sure what to do with that top one. Again, this whole casing would come off, is going off to be Cerakoted. New Oberon slave going on, probably red again. But you know, I think what we've got here is a decent, I'm happy with the finish. Perhaps I should have gone darker. I didn't go darker for one reason. The only reason I didn't go darker, because this cylinder is right by the front wheel and it gets blasted with grit, blasted with stones from the front wheel. And if I'd gone darker, every chip on it would have shown through the silver underneath. So if it had been black, it would have got pebble dashed, and then it would have looked really nasty with lots of little silver stone chips on it. So I went silver because it will sort of match the underneath when it gets chipped, and it won't show as much. So that was one of the reasons for going silver. The main reason, really. Next episode, we're going to start cleaning up all the bits I've taken off. I've got myself an ultrasonic cleaner now, so I'll give you a demo. Now we start bolting things back together. Oh yeah, I love it.